Hi. Welcome, everybody. My name is Matt Glasskamp. I'm part of the Midwest Region of Allstate's exclusive agent recruiting team. And just wanted to welcome everybody to our 2013 exclusive agent informational webinar. Today we'll be talking a little bit more about our exclusive agent opportunity. And I would like to kick it off to Kay Licciardello, who is a field sales leader here at Allstate. And Kay, take it away.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Excited about this afternoon. We've got a guest speaker with us to talk about the Allstate Agency Opportunity and hopefully, again, get some more information out to the folks who may be interested. But just as a little bit of background, I'm in the deployment area in Allstate. I work in the Midwest region. We do handle work with agents in the 3 states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. And I brought a guest today with me, and his name is Jim McCarthy. He is also in the deployment area. He's a deployment consultant for Illinois. Jim's looking specifically to find some just right people for a few select opportunities he has. So, Jim, welcome very much. Why don't you tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Kay. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me, and thank you everybody who signed in and who's here in the audience. So my role here, I work on Allstate's agency deployment team, specifically in Allstate's Human Resources Department in our Midwest region. So looking for folks with a background in sales, operations, previous business ownership experience is a huge plus as well, and obviously kind of giving them more information about our opportunity. So, we'll talk more, probably about 20 or so minutes today about what's going on here at Allstate, kind of what's in it for you, what we're looking for, and we can see if it's a good fit from there on out too. You mentioned fun facts. To be honest, there's not much fun about me. Been with Allstate since May of 2011. I bleed blue. Love the company. Love what I do currently, and looking forward to talking with all of you today.
Fantastic. Thanks again for joining us. I know you love what you do. I see you every day, and you're very good at what you do. So I do have some questions to ask you about the opportunities you have available. But before I do that, I thought it probably would be a good idea if we could talk a little bit about Allstate as a company in general. So tell me, I have been working for the company for 24 years. I'm sort of a dinosaur, really, with the company. And I also bleed blue. I say that all the time. But what are some of the things that might be important to know for someone else out here, for the audience here to know, if they're thinking about making this investment into the company?
Sure. So first off, if you take a look at the slide right now, guys, you obviously know that we're a huge company. You can't go very far without seeing our ads almost anywhere. A Fortune 100 company. We do insure over 16 million households. Currently have, over 8,000 agencies, and that's not including their staff or the financial reps who do work with them. We are based out of Northbrook here, where we're currently at right now. Large company, one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name in the Chicago area. You're looking to have a couple more individuals join our team. If you see below where it says the Midwest region, we're actually out of Allstate's Midwest region, which is, Allstate's broken down to 14 regions. So, our region itself has, close to 600 agencies. We bring in about $1.5 billion in premium. And again, looking to bring on a couple new folks in the area to join our team and obviously grow with us as a company as well.
So 600 agents, you said, $1.5 billion in premium. So as a deployment consultant, how many of those 600 have you been involved in? 550 or so?
Not that many. I'm not as old as you, Kay.
Oh, geez, thanks a lot. All right. Well, you may not be the dinosaur that I am, but I do know that you're very passionate about what you do. One of the favorite things that I like to hear you talk about is, and I hear this often from you, why insurance and why Allstate? Let's talk about that for a few minutes. Why is insurance such a good industry?
Sure, and I apologize too, because there's a lot of folks here who are currently coming from the insurance industry. Just bear with me for a few minutes as I kind of give a rundown on, why it's a good opportunity for those coming, from outside the industry. The major thing about insurance, and there's 2 bullet points here that I really want to talk on. The first one, the mandatory nature of our core products. We do sell, a whole host of products. We'll definitely go into detail about sort of what's going on and what we can offer in a few short minutes. But, we do focus on the home and auto side. It is required by law to have those. So our business doesn't fluctuate a lot with the ebbs and flows of, say, real estate or construction. Everybody has to have the products. So, it's an inelastic demand, definitely a need, and also it's a huge name in the business. So, obviously it's a pretty good company to work with if you need to offer insurance and, ultimately need to buy insurance. The second point is probably the bigger one, and it's really the secret of the industry. If there's one real takeaway, Kate, from this presentation, or for anybody on the line, it's probably this right here. You might have a certain percentage of repeat business with, say, real estate or car sales or whatever business you might be in. Well, with insurance, it's huge. It's, high 80s, low 90s in terms of percentage of your customers renewing their policies. If you build $1 million book of business, a lot of that business is going to renew with probably just calling the customers up and kind of get a feel for what they need and obviously, touching base with them so often to make sure everything that they, all the answers, all the questions are being answered and everything they need is being, provided from your agency. I'll kind of give a demonstration of what I mean by that. And I'll use UK as an example. And I apologize for being a little nosy here in front of an audience, but,
I'm an open book.
So, give me a rundown. I mean, how much would you pay? Just give me a rough number, I'd say for homeowners, not including auto, not including life, per year.
Yeah, I pay about $800 a year on my homeowners.
Okay, that's pretty standard too. So, what this means from a residual standpoint is the agency themselves is bringing in about $80 a year. How many years have you been with the agent currently?
15, I think. 16.
Okay. So, I'm not good at math, but I think it's about $1,200 over the course of 15 years. And how often do you guys speak? Do you go to his agency and visit often? Does he call you often?
We do visit. I call him every once in a while. I ask questions on bills. He's always there. And I know he reaches out to me at least once a year to kind of go over everything. But we don't talk on a daily basis.
Right. And that's kind of the nature of the opportunity and really of the insurance agent. Obviously, they're going to be there to protect your assets, but it's not like you're going in every single day and talking with the individual, really just when the problems occur. And, that $80 number, while it seems sort of small, that's not including the auto policy, right? That's not including possibly life insurance or maybe any financial needs you have working with the individual currently. So if we toss all that in the product mix, it's a couple $100, maybe, $500 or so every year as those policies renew. And that's only one customer, right? I mean, if you think about, an agency that has 1,000 customers, if you times that amount by 1,000, the money can start to add up pretty quickly too. So that's really the secret of our industry. It's a personal relationship. It's building a client base. It's servicing that client base. It's finding the right folks, who will work for you and help you, succeed and ultimately, assist your customers in protecting their assets and things like that.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like this residual income thing, it definitely sounds like a pretty good deal. But, and I guess that kind of runs into this. I often hear agents say when they're talking about sales or anybody really in sales that they have to kill what they eat. And so it sounds like in this case that's not necessarily the case. Whatever you kill, you can eat on for a long period of time, which is really nice. So you use the term exclusive agent, and I heard you mention that. What exactly does that mean?
So the word exclusive means you're simply selling exclusively Allstate's products. So you're not selling State Farm's products. You're not selling Farmers' products. You're not selling Nationwide's product line. And if you take a look at the slide right now, I mean, all of our agencies are independent business owners. So they are in charge of sales and staffing. They, are typically the person who's doing a lot of community involvement, generating new leads, new referrals, more of the driver of production, sort of the strategic, overseer really of their business. They might not be doing as a lot of the, the production work in the trenches on a day-to-day basis. And, when it comes down to it, I mean, all of our agencies run their own shop. So how an agency decides to develop their business model and execute that is really up to them. There is obviously agencies who do a lot of sales on a day-to-day basis, but there is still quite a lot who, are more of the management role and don't really get into the sales pitch on a day-to-day basis, as I mentioned. But, independent contractor role, there isn't any set, standard management role that's, telling agencies what to do on a day-to-day basis. All of our agencies run their own business. They can sell their own business. They sell our product line, which is pretty diverse. And again, we'll get into that in a second as well. But it is a self-funded venture. I want to make sure I mention that as well to everybody listening in. It does require capital to get started. And again, it isn't a franchise. There's no franchise fees or any money being paid to Allstate, but it does require capital to get started for, things like paying a lease, obviously paying for your employees, doing a lot of, lead production or marketing on the front end and things like that as you kind of grow your business, grow your client base.
Okay, so, I mean, in terms of the capital, how much are we talking that you would need to start this?
Well, it's a good question, and I don't mean to kind of, dance around it. But it depends. It depends on a few things. One, it depends on how you develop your business model, as I said. The second depends on the deployment model you decide to go forward with. And in a few minutes, we'll talk about, sort of the different ways that somebody can come into the business. But usually looking for folks who have the investment capability of around $50,000.
Okay. All right, so definitely insurance sounds like a good gig for a career path, and I do understand the concept of the exclusive agent. It all makes sense. So I'm assuming that the position is available in a lot of different insurance companies and insurance agents. So what makes Allstate, what makes us different?
Sure. So the slide you're seeing right now has 7 or 8 different bullets, and really there's probably 3 takeaways, and I'll go through the in-depth conversation on all of them. So the first one's a strong brand name. I mean, obviously Allstate's one of the best-known names in the insurance industry, if not the best, and one of the biggest names on a national level in just terms of overall marketing. You think of Coca-Cola, McDonald's. I mean, Allstate's definitely up there with the top names that people can identify with and recognize just by seeing the logo or seeing Mayhem or whoever else might be on the advertisements themselves. You've an established brand name. You're dealing with sort of a commodity that's required by law. There's no work establishing yourself, establishing your product that's already in place. If you're calling a customer and you mention Allstate, they know Allstate. They know the product. They know they're dealing with a true competitor, and obviously a person that's not some run-of-the-muck insurance company that the policy might have a couple asterisks and might not insure what they need. They know our product offerings. They know what they're getting. It's a true product line that people respect and know and love as well. But probably the biggest takeaway of this presentation as well, Kay, is our business model itself. So if you're new to insurance, this won't hit home as much as if somebody was actually coming from our industry currently. But all of our agencies have equity in their book of business. They can sell. So this is a very rare advantage in the insurance industry as a whole. And as I mentioned earlier, with the market value of an Allstate agency remaining pretty consistent, it's definitely something that's different than, say, a lot of industries like the real estate industry, the construction industry. A lot of popular franchises right now are kind of going up and down in the value of the business too. So Allstate has remained pretty consistent. And when you decide to sell your business, you can sell with your highest price. Allstate as a company, myself, we don't get involved in that process. We don't take any cut. We don't take any sort of proceed from that business. Simply get hands off. And then you kind of, find out the highest price or, in some cases, pass it down to your son or your daughter. Some cases you can actually sell back to the company if you decide to retire and think that's a good route as well.
Yeah, so this economic interest thing it is really different, and not everyone offers it, it sounds like. So that definitely seems like kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I mean, the book value right now is hovering right around 2 times the renewal value. And if anybody's interested in kind of seeing how those numbers play out, definitely let us know. But, again, something that isn't offered by a lot of companies. State Farm, for example, doesn't have an offer like that. But again, I mean, in some cases, agencies will just pass it down to their children for $1. There's also a guaranteed provision built into the contract where the company will buy it back at a set rate as well. But in most cases, individuals will, place it in the open market, ask the amount possible, negotiate with the interested buyer, and then kind of go from there as well too. So building a nice asset. In addition to having a lot of brand support, which is probably the key thing about the Allstate opportunity, really.
Yeah, I really like that. I love the leaving as a legacy thing. I got a 21-year-old that needs a career path. I need to buy a business for him. But so tell me about the other support that the company provides. What other kind of things are available? Sure.
So that was number 3, and I apologize too that I forgot that one. But I mean, the third key takeaway is, what does Allstate offer you in terms of support? And I'll go into the meat and potatoes. I mean, sure, you guys don't want to hear all the, overview and kind of HR language, but, things that we offer in new agencies, is a $4,500, what we call Executive Advantage card. So pretty much a debit card for leads. We have what we call a BRE package provided to all new agencies. So BRE branded retail environment that's worth about $3,300. So, make you consistent with the Allstate signage, things like that. Additional cost-shared marketing programs year after year for direct mail, for internet leads, things like that. Preferred vendor pricing, so you're getting the best prices available with exclusive lead generation programs. Yellow Pages advertisements, all of the training for yourself is provided free from the region. Training for your support staff as well, provided free from the region. ongoing business consultation support. We have what we call field sales leaders who, work with new individuals to kind of develop a business plan, develop a marketing plan, make sure they're targeting the right areas based on competitiveness and our current market penetration, things like that. Our own PR team to help you get in the community. Ongoing claims, technology, you name it, support. I mean, the marketing and branding is a huge thing as well, too. There's a lot of things going on from the region to help you, find your, your niche in the market and help you succeed, really.
Yeah, and the support sounds phenomenal. And obviously good industry, good company, if we do say so ourselves. But, in terms of insurance itself, what can your agent sell? Because I see a lot of commercials out there. It seems like companies really kind of specialize in one line of insurance or another. What do we specialize in? What can our agents sell?
Sure. So, if you're taking a look at the slide now, guys, I mean, this is a pretty diverse product mix. It's about 72 different products in total. So, obviously you're not seeing 72 different things on the slide right now. But, in terms of what we focus on, it's definitely the bread and butter. It's the P&C. So for those of you new to insurance, P&C is property casualty. What that means is home and auto. We're really good at it, too. What I mean by that is we have strong close rates, obviously a very well-respected name. To kind of give you an example of something new that's happening, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to talk about, but, we recently introduced what we call single car PPD, which allows a lot of customers in the Chicagoland area to, insure their car as long as they have, say, a homeowners or renters or condo policy with us and receive up to a 17% discount, which wasn't available, say, 2 months ago. So looking for that, retention rate, that close rate to probably increase by 2 percentage points each. So different things like that are ongoing, obviously, to kind of make us more competitive and keep us with that competitive advantage in the industry. But again, 72 different products. If we take a look here, a full host of auto and home. The financial lines, we definitely have life insurance. We do a lot of mutual funds and annuities, works through our own broker dealer, and definitely work with a lot of different companies as well. What we call brokered affiliates, should we not have a product that customers need or, in some cases, depending on the market, if we're not as competitive in some of the rural areas, to be able to offer products at a competitive rate to our current customers as well. I always mention that you can't always fit a square peg into a round hole. So Allstate recognizes that. We recognize that we're not as competitive in, say, far west Illinois as we might be with, the greater Chicagoland area. So we have different product offerings to make sure that we can offer those. Our agents do stay competitive. The customers do get a good price point. Everybody wins.
Right. This definitely sounds very, very interesting. What if someone thinks that they may want to do this as a career? What do they have to do? What steps do they have to take?
Well, our process itself, and as you can see by the slide, it's pretty lengthy. It's definitely not an open cattle call, so to speak. It definitely goes about 3 or 4 months, and really it goes 3 or 4 months just because of the last 2 steps you see at the end. The training course itself is about 6 to 8 weeks, definitely pretty lengthy. So, we're taking a look at you, making sure you're a good fit from us from, an HR standpoint, a background standpoint. A little bit later on, you're meeting with a couple of our sales leaders as well to kind of get a feel for, the market and making sure that the model is going to be a good fit for yourself, making sure it's a good investment opportunity for you. And then, taking the process to get, licensed, kind of develop a sample business model. You might be with a current agent or two to kind of get a feel for how they, fare in the current market, what they think about the company, things like that. And then if you're not already licensed, getting licensed, developing that plan and going through the training course prior to opening your doors too. So again, takeaway, it is a pretty lengthy process. It's never something somebody comes to the conclusion to do overnight. We're talking 3-4 months at least, I would say. But again, it can move as fast or as slow as somebody needs just based on, where they kind of stand up from an investment standpoint and, how well they think it might be a good fit for them.
Okay. So when you talk about this education program, I think you mentioned 6 weeks or a little bit more, but what are you teaching them? Are you teaching them, what insurance products you have? Are you teaching them how to sell? Are you teaching them how to run the agency? Kind of what goes on in the education?
So to answer your question, all the above. Okay. First off, it doesn't happen just in one set place. So if you're on the call right now and you're from, say, Minnesota or Wisconsin or anywhere else we recruit, there are some time spent at, some of the territorial sales offices there. But a lot of it is spent in Northbrook where we're going through the training course, kind of teaching how to sell products, how to upsell, how to be the consultant, the liaison for your current customers should they have a claims issue. There is a lot of different technology pieces as well. So going through the products as well. making sure that you understand, what's being offered, the different pieces included in that. And by pieces, I mean, what are we insuring, what is being excluded, things like that. If you already have staff in mind, the staff are joining as well. They're getting on the phone calls, they're getting on the phones, they're making calls, they're making sales, kind of getting their feet wet as soon as possible. And then, other things as well. So you're meeting with the senior leadership, kind of seeing what happens on a day-to-day basis from a regional standpoint. How do we support you? How can we help you? How can we develop a plan to make us all succeed, really?
Great. And it sounds really, really thorough, and I'm sure that, and again, in this whole process, you probably learn a lot. But even at that, what if you're you're not from insurance and you haven't kind of grown up in this and you're from outside of the industry? Is it difficult to learn all of this in a period of time and then open your agency right away? I know some people are nervous about that. So is there any way to come in kind of slowly or part-time or anything like that?
Well, there's no way to come in part-time. This is a business venture. You are building your own business. So we are looking for folks who have the availability and who want to invest both their time and money into an operation like this. I mean, this is a business venture. It does require, at least 40 hours, 50, 60 hours in some cases to kind of build your client base, to build your business. But we do recognize there's a lot of individuals who come in who, may be new to insurance, who may be a little worried about financial investment, who may need a longer runway because there is so much stuff being thrown at you. My manager always uses the metaphor or the example that, it's like trying to drink water with a fire hose. There's so much coming out at you at the same time. So for folks who might be new to business, there is different deployment models. So what you see right here, that picture is probably the nicest thing. This is what we call a new agency development center. It's actually here in Brookfield. But we have a few of these things going on right now. There's actually one just across the street from Northbrook. There's one, for example, in Woodridge as well, too, where new agencies can come on board. They can, work by themselves out of sort of a, I guess you mentioned it sometimes as like an incubator program where you're kind of learning the process, helping refine the sales techniques, building your own client base before transitioning out to your own specific markets. So in this opportunity, you don't have the staffing costs in place yet. The lease itself is something like $100, very, very cheap compared with the current rent. The operating cost level of risk are much lower, and it helps the candidate kind of come on board, who's still interested in running their own business, who's still interested in insurance, who's still interested with the Allstate name, but come in a little more safer setting. Now, also understand that, again, if it was down this route, for example, the last 3 months of that nine-month process, you are looking at getting staff. You are looking at potential locations to open up come month 10 and then transition out. The thing I mentioned lower, the multi-agent center is a different concept as well. We have current agencies, working out of, say, a corporate-owned facility. So very similar to the NADC, but the main difference is they have staff. We currently have one in Chicago that has 4 agencies and their staff, and sort of a sense of camaraderie built in. There's sort of a sense of competition. So different environment, but still high energy sales-paced environment. This allows them to kind of cost share, the marketing expenses, the operating expenses, and then after about 2 years, they will transition from that location to their own specific markets with their already existing client base, their own book of business cool. With them as well.
Very, very cool. Well, I love these new deployment models. I think it's really exciting. You've definitely, again, piqued some interest here. Obviously, it's a great opportunity. If someone else out there is interested, what do they need to do to get more information?
Well, I mean, the next step really, if this has piqued your interest, is either talk with myself or Matt. Our contact information and photos and everything like that is on the slide right now. I handle agency deployment for Illinois, Matt for Minnesota and Wisconsin. So, give us a call, send us an email if interested. We'll talk more about sort of what's going on here at Allstate, the different deployment areas we're looking to expand in, what's in it for you in terms of compensation, things like that you really need to know to see if it's a good fit. And then if it is a good fit, we have you, fill out an application, talk with, like I mentioned, our sales leaders to kind of get a feel for how the business model looks very in depth. Again, we'll leave the slide here as we take questions. I think there's been a few that came in over the last 20 or 30 minutes. Again, I'm the good-looking one on the right. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Matt or myself, and we'll feel free to give you a call and talk further one-on-one.
Okay, great. So we will take some questions, people that we have here in the room. There are a couple of questions online that we'll probably get to afterwards, but for time purposes. So young lady in the back there.
Sure. Yeah, I have a question. Are you able to own another business while being an Allstate agent?
Sure, so I'll take that. And yes, you are. There's a lot of our agencies who do have multiple businesses. For example, we brought on one just recently, actually in Indianapolis, who had a self-storage facility, 3 or 4 of them. A lot of our agencies have interest in, say, real estate or, sometimes it's construction or whatever else it might be. There is a couple of exceptions, and obviously just based on conflicts of interest, we wouldn't take individuals, say, who currently own another insurance agency or maybe, work on the financial side. But as long as it's, not one of those cases, and there is very few cases we don't consider folks for, we definitely encourage it. But also, keep in mind that this is a startup venture. It does require a lot of time and, investment to get started. So if this is something that you would want to do in addition and kind of work part-time on, it probably wouldn't be a, good match, just to be honest with you from our end. But again, to reiterate, a lot of our agencies, if not the majority, do have other business interests. It's not a problem at all. We take on quite a lot of individuals who are entrepreneurial and have a lot of things in the mix, definitely.
Great. Thank you. And then we have a question from the gentleman in the back there, please.
Yes. When you were talking about the product, you mentioned your close rate on business is above average. Can you share what the close rate percentage is?
Yeah, sure. So it depends, and it depends on the different markets. So, for example, in Chicago itself, the greater area, I mean, the industry average is probably 12, 14%. I'll say it's 14, 16, and some zip codes we're talking low 20s, high teens, which is very competitive. In the North Chicago itself, I think we've seen 22% on auto and home. But again, it depends on where you're at exactly. It looks different in Minnesota. It looks different in Wisconsin. It looks a little different in southern Illinois. But close rates in the high teens is not uncommon, which is very good in the industry. We're the top, if not the top, in the property casualty industry as well, too. So, again, if you're interested, we'll talk afterwards. I can show you the details and sort of the areas you'd be interested in expanding in. Take a look at the close rates and see if it's a potential match.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll get to you next. Just let me away.
Sure. What about business partners? Is this an opportunity that would allow for business partners?
Yeah, certainly. So we have a lot of agencies who go into business, and typically, to be honest with you, what it is it's a mother, father, son, mom, pop sort of shop thing. But there is a lot of instances where we have a personal or an investor come in and sponsor somebody through the process. So it does happen. It's not uncommon. Just understand that the company itself only really recognizes one agency principal. We only communicate with one person that we recognize as the owner. But whatever sort of deals 2 people have together or 3 people have together on their end, whether it be like an LLC or if they incorporate the business, it definitely is quite often seen. I wouldn't say it happens very often, but definitely it definitely will be the first time this year we've seen something like that come on board. Definitely an option, yeah.
Okay, and then in the interest of time, I think we'll just get more question lady in the back there.
Okay, yes. How do you select where to place a new office?
So that's a good question, and we really didn't go into that very in depth on the presentation. And the easiest way to answer that question is it's definitely in partnership. And what I mean by that is, Allstate as a company, we do a lot of market analysis, take a look at a few things, right? We take a look at our current market penetration. We take a look at our close rates. Take a look at our what does our agency count look like in the area? Is the market projected for growth? Is it projected for decline? And then we make an educated decision and provide that information to you. So later in the process, if somebody's interested in coming on board, they take a look at that information, and then they find out an area that might be best for them. Now, understand that obviously if you're, say, from, Chicago itself, it might not make sense to go, 30 miles west of where you're at. We recognize that. I mean, if you have a current network in place where you're at, it would only make sense to open up a business in that area. So, you take that information into consideration. As long as you're not, say, 2 miles or a mile and a half in some cases of a current Allstate agency, the area's fine. I mean, you're finding your own locations, your own business. So when it comes down to what you think is best for you, as long as it's, say, 123 Main Street location, it's not too close to a current Allstate agent, you have definitely the flexibility to do so. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Of course.
Okay, great. So, Jim, Kay, and I will be around after the presentation. So, in interest of time, we'll be around to answer some more questions if you have any other ones. So, all the people on the phone, thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, certainly contact Jim or myself. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.